Since 1875, the Arlington has been hosting guests as one of the South's premier resorts, truly an American treasure. The colorful history of 3 eras of Arlington hotels is not architectural beauty and uniqueness alone. Always the center of activities in Hot Springs, the Arlington has hosted hundreds of grand balls and social events since 1875. Politicians, dignitaries, actors, gangsters, and entertainment and sports legends bathe in the bathhouse, dance to the music, and enjoy the splendor and charm. The Arlington has survived devastating fire, economic turndowns, changing social attitudes, and much more. Steeped in history, the Arlington is truly a legend. A storied past, the history of the Arlington. The present Arlington opened December 31st, 1924, with a gala New Year's Eve dinner dance. Although the third Arlington architecturally differs from the first 2, there is one holdover, the Twin Towers. Originally opened in 1875, the Arlington Hotel is a Hot Springs treasure. Its original wooden structure was 3 stories high and boasted 120 guest rooms, making it the largest in the state for that era. Gas lights illuminated spacious rooms, and there was a grand court between the structure's 2 wings. Colonial porches ran the full length of the building to Hot Springs Mountain. In the late 1880s, some 100 rooms, a new dining room with electric lights, and another parlor were added. The original building was raised to make way for a new 300-room Spanish Renaissance structure in 1893. The new Arlington was referred to as the most elegant and complete hotel in America in Charles Cutler's 1892 guidebook. Designed in 3 sections but with 5 levels, the new Arlington featured a spacious veranda with arcades running the full length of the hotel. Photographs and records in the 1894 and 1896 Cutter's Guide show a rotunda, grand ornamental oak stairway circling the beautiful glass dome, the lobby, a pink parlor, and grand ballroom. The building was destroyed by a fire on April 5th, 1923. This Arlington, as its counterparts, was designed with bathers and vacationers in mind and had 560 rooms. The Crystal Ballroom, Venetian Room, and lobby were part of the 1924 structure. Adjacent to the lobby are the Writing Room, which is now Starbucks, Card Room, now called the Magnolia Room, and a boardroom for meetings. The music room for the Arlington's orchestra's performances opened to the Venetian Room. The Arlington included an in-house bathhouse with open, bright, separate accommodations for both men and women, and around 50 rooms that had thermal mineral water piped in. All of these facilities, except the music room, are still in use. For 30 years, windows and door louvers ventilated guest rooms until 1955, when air conditioning and heating systems were installed. The 3 guest elevators, in operation since 1969, replaced the original hand-operated elevators installed in 1924. Around from the main elevator is the original bathhouse elevator, lined with beveled glass and shining brass, still manually operated. The Arlington's luxurious accommodations and location in America's Spa City have attracted many famous guests, including U.S. presidents Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, George H.W. Bush, and native son Bill Clinton. Many baseball greats such as Babe Ruth and as well as championship boxers have all relaxed and enjoyed the thermal baths at the Arlington. Stars such as Tony Bennett, Barbra Streisand, Yoko Ono have all luxuriated at the hotel. Al Capone, whose favorite room was number 443, had the whole floor for his staff and bodyguards. He could look across the street from his window and see the activities at the Southern Club, now the Wax Museum. So if you're looking for a road trip, definitely check out the Arlington Hotel in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Definitely a must-see, and it's kind of a sister hotel to the Baker in Mineral Wells, Texas. The Woodman Circle Home was an orphanage and a dormitory for widowed women. The fraternal organization that ran it was the first of its kind to offer life insurance to women. Part of the deal was that if a woman held a policy and passed away, her family members would get a payout. If her husband also died, her children would be taken care of at Woodman Circle until they graduated high school. A woman who was widowed or retired who didn't need to be taken care of financially could live there as well. The home opened June 25, 1930, and it was the largest public event ever planned at the time, drawing more than 6,000 visitors from 41 states. Guests were served 3,000 pounds of barbecued beef, and volunteers used 82 bushels of potatoes to make the potato salad. Even before it opened, the Woodman Circle home had a positive influence on Sherman and North Texas. The groundbreaking in 1928 led to the creation of more than 100 jobs for men in the area, at the time when the economics of the Great Depression left very few options in many other cities. Now the grandeur of the Georgian-style architecture has given way to decay. Walls and ceilings have collapsed into a decrepit space. Window glass has been smashed out of its panes and graffiti along the walls and floors, while no trespassing signs promise hefty fines. Until its closure in 1971, Woodman Circle was home to over 100 children and 165 women, who otherwise might have had nowhere else to go. Since then, it has been left alone on its hillside vista to crumble. In May 2022, Woodman Circle was demolished. Located in present-day Jones County, Fort Phantom Hill is one of the most pristine historic sites in Texas, sitting on 22 acres of land. It was one of the second line of forts laid out in the early 1850s to protect the westward moving frontier of Texas settlement. Today, Fort Phantom Hill is part of the Texas Forts Trail, a 650-mile highway tour of historic Texas forts in west central Texas. Originally known as the Post on the Clear Fork of the Brazos, the fort was occupied by the U.S. Army from 1851 until 1854. Shortly after the Army abandoned Fort Phantom Hill, fire destroyed most of the log walls and thatched roofs of the post building. However, much remains of the old fort for visitors to explore, inspect, and study, including 3 original stone buildings, an intact stone powder magazine, a stone guardhouse, and an almost intact commissary or warehouse, more than a dozen chimneys and stone foundations from the original fort. Just go out and go explore, because history is slowly starting to fade away, and it's up to us to get out there and start documenting some of the history. We hope that you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for others. So if you wonder where I'm at right now, I am at the Chisholm Trail in Texas. And I'll do a little backstory right now. And for those that don't know, the Chisholm Trail was started to bring cattle from San Antonio all the way up into Kansas. And right now I am in the wonderful town of Wardville, Texas, where the Chisholm Trail ran right through. Let's talk about some of the unique buildings that are on this property and on this land and some of the history. Now, first up, we're going to look at the depiction of the Nolan River School, which was in existence for almost 20 years in the mid-1800s. Today, the new structure is a school of learning for everyone. Now, the original courthouse of Johnson County was a 16-foot square log cabin with clapboards over the top. The actual building, which cost $49 to build back in 1855, stands proudly today as it's part of the Outdoor Museum. And just west of the courthouse is the Wardville, Texas Sheriff's Office. When you go inside, it still has the original 2 cells. We'll talk about that later. And as we move along, we come up to recreation of the Stagecoach Station, which now also has restrooms for everyone to visit. And also, they've got a blacksmith shop. And I'll show you a blacksmith at work here in just a little bit. This is a cool school. A little rhyme there. My daughter liked that. Cool school. It is a traditional one-room school that was very popular in the day. You have your teacher up here. Of course, all the students sitting in their proper spot. Have their pencils here. Hopefully the windows will be open because it is ridiculously hot today. Very, very hot. And very hot in this building. I wonder how many prisoners are actually in this little jaily stagecoach. From the looks of this one, I'm going to say this one is a rebuild, or not a rebuild, a replica, just because the bars, they don't feel they feel hollow. Now this, on the other hand, this I believe is an actual. This one's got, looks like drum brakes on it and modern day leaf spring, where this one here has no drum brakes, and I don't even know what kind of suspension you would call that. This looks a little bit more authentic, and so does this one here. You can tell by the cobwebs. So that one does look cool though, because it does give you a little idea of what it does, or what it did look like back in the day for the sheriff to round up prisoners and take them back here, walk him in. Obviously it wouldn't be a latch like this because you wouldn't want something that flimsy, but they would sit down and get rode into jail or rode into court. I would imagine jail first, then they would see the judge, find out what their sentence is going to be, whether it was a couple of days in jail or maybe even a couple of months. And speaking of months, can you imagine what it was like to be in jail in Texas in the 1800s with no air conditioning? Ripe. That's the word I'm coming up with right now. It would be very, very ripe. Blech. Here, you're the blacksmith in town. It's just about quitting time anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, just about.
So, any of this original?
The building, no.
The building, no?
No. The blower was made in 1903.
Oh, nice.
The power hammer was made in 1917. That collection of horseshoes, some of them are over 100 years old. But, and a lot of my tongs are up to 150 years old.
I thought they had bellows back then. I didn't know that they had actually...
They started with the crate blowers and just after Civil War.
Wow, that's kind of modern, you know, because,
Yeah.
you know, when you think about the old bellows that they'd have to get the air moving.
If I'd had a bellows, it'd be a great bellows hanging up on the ceiling with just a handle to pull down. I wish I had one, but they're expensive to make and hard to upkeep.
Yeah. Yeah, that leather, I mean, after a while starts chafing in that fold, doesn't it? So, like I said, here at the Chisholm Trail, now this is the museum property, but all the buildings that are on the property are still all the original buildings. Really, really cool to check out. Ooh, I see a little bridge. Let's see what goes there. So that's the creek bed that goes around the property here. And the interesting thing is, the gentleman told me that once in a while when the creek actually dries up, you can go all the way back to the backside of the property and actually see the original wagon wheel tracks that are still in the creek bed. Very cool. That's it for me on this little excursion slash, I guess, a little scouting run. You never know the places that you can find. Just get on Google, and I was actually just searching for abandoned towns in North Texas, and this popped up. And not so much abandoned town. It is officially an abandoned town, but it's part of the Chisholm Trail, and I thought it was, from what I saw online from the photos, I was like, wow, this is definitely a place I want to go check out just for historical value, because I mean, I've been out to Fort Richardson before a couple of times. Super historical, and we definitely got some activity back the couple of times that we went. So I'm looking forward to coming out here and investigating, because I got my contact in to be able to come out here and do an investigation. Can you imagine that? Chisholm Trail Pioneer Days are coming up November 15th and 16th here. So they're going to be doing live reenactments, cannon fire. The rumor is that you're going to have some Confederate troops and some Union troops out here doing some reenactments, as well as some Native American Indians. So that should be interesting to spark up a little bit of activity out here. But when we come out here to investigate, I definitely want to do some of the cannon fire, gunshot fire, sound banks, and run it through a speaker just to see what kind of responses that we get. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. If you're in Texas and you want to go to a historical place, the Chisholm Trail and the old Chisholm Trail Museum, definitely thumb up on my list of places to go. History out here in the grounds is just crazy. You start walking around and you almost get the feeling that you've just stepped back in time. Today we're going to visit Gonzales, Texas, and the old Gonzales Jail. Gonzales is one of the earliest Anglo-American settlements in Texas, the first one west of the Colorado River. It was established by Presidio Green DeWitt as the capital of his colony in August of 1825. DeWitt named the community for Rafael Gonzales, governor of Coahuila y Tejas. The legacy of Gonzales is a long and rich one, placing its narrative across the list of premier historical watermarks in the evolution of the Texas statehood. On October 2, 1835, the first shot of the Texas Revolution exploded here from a 6-pound cannon. The cannon, a gift from the Mexican government to the Gonzales community for defense against the local Comanche and Tehuanca tribes, became the symbol of the battle that would spell the end of the Mexican rule in Texas, march toward freedom and statehood. The Battle of Gonzales, with its "Come and Take It" motto, was the first real revolt by the community's American colonists against the ruling government, reflecting the overwhelming settlement across the future of the state of Texas. Two nearby sites also help tell the story of Texas independence. 7 miles west of Gonzales, a monument dedicated to the Battle of Gonzales is located near the place of the battle, the village of Cost. 8 miles east of town, the Branches House and the Sam Houston Oak is alleged to be the spot where General Sam Houston received the news that the Alamo had fallen and the defenders killed. The home can be seen from the road, or a tour can be arranged through the Gonzales Visitor Center. Today, Gonzales offers a far friendlier atmosphere, surrounded by icons of the state's epic past. The historical homes and buildings comprise much of the Texas Main Street city, where a total of 7 public squares surround the courthouse. A Romanesque revival design completed in 1886 and restored in 1997. Museums include the Old Jail Museum, housed in an 1887 Italianate jail designed by architect Eugene T. Heiner, provide a compelling overview of the Gonzales legacy. What is believed to be the infamous cannon is part of the permanent collection of the Gonzales Memorial Museum. Special events include the Come and Take It celebration, a 3-day festival featuring live music, a parade, square dancing, chili cook-off, and reenactments. Now let's talk about the jail. Enter an entrance hall, which was the sheriff's office. To the left were 3 rooms, kitchen, and a bath used as the family living quarters for the sheriff or jailer. All of the ceilings are made of corrugated steel and concrete. On the floor are display cases for articles taken from prisoners, information about the sheriffs, deputies, and other law enforcement officials who served through the years. At the end of the hall is the dungeon, where the only light and air came from holes above the door. There's a jailer's bedroom and a women's lunatic cell. The 2nd and 3rd floors feature a large room known as the Runaround, which is 2 stories high and was not used for hardened criminals. The death cells are at the front of this room and feature doors of 2-inch iron strips forged and fused through the use of heat, borax, and a hammer. Since the jail was built before welding was invented, in each wing of the room are 2-story metal cells built as rooms within a room and featuring more of the riveted doors. The last gallows were used in 1921 and were torn down in the 1950s. They stood in a runaround next to the 3rd floor walkway. The present gallows are an exact reproduction. Large doors to the cell blocks feature small swing-out doors with bars, from which the jailer could observe the prisoners, and inside the room are levers that open the closed latches on the cell doors. There were 6 legal hangings in Gonzales, the first in 1855 between the jail and the jailer's house that were on the market square. In 1887, it was estimated that 4,000 people arrived to feast the witness of the human suffering and shedding of blood of Brown Bowen. Another hanging was in 1881. After this jail was built, the first permanent gallows were built in 1891 and used again in 1897. Albert Howard's hanging was on March 18, 1921, was the last held in Gonzales County and this jail. A legend persists that while Howard was in jail, he became obsessed with the clock on the courthouse, keeping strict attention to the number of hours he had left to live. He swore his innocence would be shown on the clock, that none of the four faces would ever keep the same time again if he was hanged. Through the years, the faces have rarely been consistent. When you're out exploring, you never know when you're going to catch your name engraved on a wall. All right, out here at Fort Parker, do a little scouting run. Check this place out. When you visit the old Fort Parker, you'll be stepping back in time and getting a glimpse of what frontier life was like in the 1830s. And you'll be learning a little bit more about the fascinating history of early Texas. The Fort Parker Massacre of May 1836 was an event in which members of the pioneer Parker family were killed in a raid by Native Americans. In this raid, a 9-year-old girl, Cynthia Ann Parker, was captured and spent most of the rest of her life with the Comanches, marrying the chief, Pete Nocona, and giving birth to a son, Quanah Parker, who would become the last chief of the Comanches. Her brother, John Richard Parker, was also captured, was ransomed back after 6 years, but unable to adapt to white society, he returned to the Comanches. Soon the settlers were making their homes and farming the land. Several had built cabins on their farms and used the fort for protection. Peace treaties were made with the surrounding Native American chiefs. The fort inhabitants had also allowed a Texas Rangers company to use the fort, perhaps not understanding that many Native Americans regarded the Rangers with hatred for their Indian fighting. On May 19, 1836, a large party of Native Americans, including Comanches, Kiowas, Caddos, and Wichitas, attacked the inhabitants of Fort Parker. In her memoir, Rachel Plummer wrote that 1 minute the fields in front of the fort were clear, and the next moment, more Indians than I ever dreamed possible were in front of the fort. Now, one of the Indians approached the fort with a white flag. No one believed the flag was genuine. Silas Parker wanted 5 men present to man the walls and fight as the best that they could. Benjamin Parker felt that by going out, he could buy some time for the majority of the women and children to flee out of the back, small little gate in the back. He felt that there was simply no way that the 5 men would be able to hold the Indians off for more than a second or two, as they could use ropes to scale the walls. He felt that the war party would then kill everyone in the fort and the unsuspecting men in the fields. Benjamin knew that he was going to be killed. According to Rachel Plummer's account, Benjamin returned to the fort after his first talk with the war party, and he told his brother and father that he believed that they would all be killed and that they should all run swiftly to the woods. Silas argued with him again, telling him that they should push against the big gate and close it and man the walls. Ben pointed out rightly, Rachel said that there was no time and their course was decided. He told her, "Run, little Rachel, run for your life with your unborn child, run now and fast." She said he then straightened up and went back outside. She recounted how Silas told her to watch the front gate after Benjamin had gone out to talk to the Indians a second time. When she herself wanted to flee, while he ran for his musket and powder pouch. "They will kill Benjamin," she reported to her Uncle Silas, saying, "and then me, but I will do for at least one of them, by God." At that moment, she said she heard a whooping outside the fort, and the Indians were inside. The 3 to 5 minutes brought enough time for the majority of the women and children to get away. Rachel Plummer, who was pregnant, was afraid that she would not be able to keep up while carrying her 2-year-old son. So she stayed in the fort. She began running after seeing several Indians come into the fort, holding her little boy's hand, while behind her, she said, she saw Indians stabbing Benjamin with their lances, and then she heard Uncle Silas shout in defiance as though he had 1,000 men with him. Alas, he was gone and soon dead. Lucy Parker, who was also a small child, stopped to argue with her husband Silas, begging him to come with her. Elizabeth Duty Kellogg stopped to gather up their savings, $100 in coins, before they attempted to escape. Benjamin Parker was killed, and before the fort's gates could be closed, the raiders rushed inside. Silas Parker, who was outside with his brother, was killed before he was able to get back inside the gate. Samuel Frost and his son Robert were killed inside the gate as they attempted to flee. John Parker was castrated and then scalped. His wife came out to the woods when she saw his torture and was captured. Lucy Parker and her youngest 2 children were initially captured but rescued by David Falconberry as he ran up to the fort from the fields. Her 2 oldest children, however, along with Rachel and her son and Elizabeth Kellogg, were successfully kidnapped. In all, 5 men were killed. Some of them were left for dead. 2 women and 3 children were captured, and the rest escaped into the wilderness. Presidio La Bahia, designated a National Historic Landmark, is considered the world's finest example of a Spanish frontier fort. This is the most fought-over fort in Texas history, having seen participation in national revolutions, wars for independence. Spanish, Mexican, and Texas soldiers all garrisoned its fortified walls. Here at the crossroads of revolution was felt almost every attempt to forcibly change the governmental order of Texas. Presidio La Bahia is a fort, not a mission. The chapel was erected in a quadrangle for the sole use of the soldiers and Spanish settlers living in the town of La Bahia surrounding the fort. The name given to the chapel was Our Lady of Laredo, and it is the oldest building on the compound in continuous use since the 1700s. All right, over here at Presidio La Bahia. It is in Goliad, Texas, where the Battle of Goliad took place. This has been kind of on a bucket list for the last couple of years, wanting to check out, and had an opportunity to come out. Some friends had booked the location. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I just shot some drone footage too, which is kind of cool, but I'll take you on a little tour. One of the turrets up here with the cannons, and you can can see the view at the soldier saw. And this right here is the Catholic Church, 1794 or 49. I'll do a little update on the date. What a great place to check out. I mean, forget that's cool. That's cool. My doorbell at home chimes that. One of the oldest churches in America, it is also one of the only buildings in existence that has the original groin vaulted ceilings in place. The striking fresco behind the altar was done in 1946 by the Michelangelo of South Texas, renowned Corpus Christi artist Antonio Garcia. Located in a niche above the chapel entrance is the statue of Our Lady of Laredo, sculptured by Lincoln Borglum of Mount Rushmore fame. This centuries-old chapel is where the famines men were held during part of their captivity before being massacred. The first Declaration of Texas independence was signed inside the chapel. After the Texas Revolution of 1836, while other buildings on the Presidio fell into neglect and disrepair, the chapel was still used as a place of worship and at one time was temporarily used as a private residence. An act of the Republic of Texas in 1841 restored church properties confiscated by the Republic. It was not until 1855 that the first non-Hispanic bishop of Texas, Bishop J.M. Oden, received title from the town council of Goliad. Through the loving devotion of the local residents, the chapel continues its existence as a place of worship. The Presidio Nuestra Senora de Loretta de la Bahia, better known as Presidio La Bahia, is a Spanish fort built in present-day Goliad, Texas in 1749. Through the years, it served the people of 4 independent nations, including Spain, Mexico, the Republic of Texas, and the United States. It is recognized for its cross-cultural, religious, and military significance. Today, the Presidio is most famous for its part in the Texas Revolution, including the Battle of Goliad in October 1835 and the Goliad Massacre in March of 1836. Constructed in 1849 to protect the Spanish missions of South Texas, including the nearby Franciscan mission Espiritu Santo, the Presidio La Bahia is an outstanding example of Spanish military compound. The Presidio played a critical role in developing Spanish and Mexican culture in the region. It was also important in conflicts that took place through the years of the Mexican Revolution that began in 1821 and the later Texas Revolution in 1835 and 1836. During the early 18th century, the vicinity of Goliad was better known as La Bahia del Espiritu Santo. The Spanish began populating La Bahia as early as the 1670s in response to a sudden French interest in the area. Captain Domingo Ramon of the Aguayo expedition founded the first Presidio in 1672, near Matagorda Bay to prevent further colonization attempts by the French. By 1726, the Spanish moved the original fort inland, first to a site along the Guadalupe River, and in 1749 to a final time to Goliad across from the San Antonio River from the newly established Franciscan mission Nuestra Senora del Espiritu Santo del Zugina. The fertile land, nearby mission, and military presence attracted many Spanish ranchers and farmers to the area, and soon the Presidio community grew into a sizable colony. In 1829, the town took on the name of Goliad, which it retains today. Grapevine, Texas, centrally located between Dallas and Fort Worth, is home to many historic experiences. Museums, historic sites, a vintage railroad, and much more make for a family-friendly destination. Grapevine was settled in 1844 and so named for the wild Mustang grapes that grew across the rich black soil of the Grapevine Prairie. The land supported farmers from early subsistence farming to the post-Civil War era cotton production and on to produce farming and dairy industry well into the 20th century. Grapevine's rich cultural and heritage are preserved today with several museums and historical attractions from early 19th century log structures to the roaring locomotives of the railroad. Nash Farm, Tarrant County's oldest operating farmstead, is featured just a few blocks from historic Main Street. The farm is open daily and features living history activities focused on the late 19th century history of the farm. Heirloom varieties of vegetables can be found in the kitchen garden as well as fields of crops of cotton, wheat, and corn. The farm raises heritage livestock including Gulf Coast native sheep, Kentucky red bourbon turkeys, and speckled Sussex chickens. Thomas Jefferson Nash and his wife Elizabeth purchased the farm in 1859 with an established log cabin. The family raised a total of 5 daughters and a son. In 1869, they built a 2-story green farmhouse that stands today. The farmhouse has been restored and furnished for visitors to experience today with hands-on activities. The Nash Farm barn is also original to the site and is fully restored and functional in supporting livestock operations. The grounds also include outbuildings, poultry houses, a windmill, and a pole barn pavilion for special events. The farm also features a farm store complete with souvenirs and replica items reminiscent of old-fashioned general store. Nash Farm hosts a wide variety of events and programs each year, including family festivals, heritage workshops, farm suppers, vintage baseball, and historic social events and more. Heritage workshops include skill and trades often found on the Grapevine Prairie, from hog butchering, sewing, food preservation, cooking, and more. Events include hands-on family learning elements such as pie making, carpentry, gardening, and much more. Travel along Heritage Trail just 2 blocks from Nash Farm and you'll find the beautiful settlement of City Museums. The area includes 5 structures detailing the story of Grapevine. The 1888 Keeling House was a family home for the owner of the long-running Grapevine Sun newspaper. And the museum inside the home chronicles how Grapevine developed from a pioneer settlement into a world-class city and visitor destination. Guests will also discover a working 1881 Chandler and Price printing press and even try their hand at printing with living historians. You can step back into a simpler time inside the Donald Schoolhouse. You can have a seat at the desk for a lesson or dismiss class with the school bell. Head over next door to learn about Grapevine's rich cotton production in the late 19th century at the Cotton Ginners Museum. Guests can view restored E. Van Winkle gin. The Grapevine's Historical Society collection is presented through first-rate exhibits inside the replica ice house belonging to the Grapevine Ice Company. And just across the street you'll enter the Cotton Belt Railroad District, home to the Grapevine Vintage Railroad. The 1888 Cotton Belt Depot welcomes you to an excursion on board the Grapevine Vintage Railroad Victorian-style coaches. Powering the railroad are 4 locomotives including 3 mid-century diesel-electric locomotives and Puffy, an 1896 steam locomotive. The Grapevine Vintage Railroad operates on the weekends throughout the year with excursions to the historic Stockyard Station in Fort Worth, as well as special events throughout the year from jazz wine trains to the famed North Pole Express. The Railroad District is also home to working art studios and other historic museums. Studios include glass blowing, a bronze foundry, and other traditional arts. Historic museum shops include the Grapevine Tin Shop at the Bragg House and McMillan Blacksmith Shop. The area also features a 4-crib log barn and the Cotton Belt Route Section Foreman House adjacent to the Grapevine Vintage Railroad platform. The exhibit Aprons of the Past, Skills and Trades on the Grapevine Prairie is presented throughout the museum. The first permanent Anglo settlement in the Grapevine area was known as the Missouri Colony. In 1844, a group of related families from Platte County, Missouri, settled along Denton Creek in the vicinity of present-day Grapevine. on land that was part of the Peters Colony. By July 1846, children were receiving their education from John Allen Freeman in a log schoolhouse. The first church in the area was Lonesome Dove Baptist Church, founded in 1846 and located about 5 miles northwest of Grapevine. Around 1854, Judge James Tracy Moorhead, Archibald Franklin Leonard, and Henry L. Suggs, among others, met for the purpose of laying out a town and establishing a post office. Moorhead proposed the name Grapevine due to the settlement's location on the Grapevine Prairie. Leonard, who operated the first store in the town, was appointed first postmaster. Grapevine, as two words, was incorporated on February 12, 1907. The United States Post Office condensed the name to just one word, Grapevine, in 1914. The first houses built in Grapevine were simple log cabins occupied by settlers. Later, the typical 19th century Grapevine house was one-story, wood-frame dwelling, topped with a gable and hipped roof. Prior to the Civil War, cattle raising was a primary source of economic activity in the region. Grapevine Masonic Lodge number 288 was chartered in 1866. The town's commercial district, consisting of a single-story and two-story brick buildings, developed throughout the 1880s and 1890s. The city hosts two annual festivals, the Main Street Fest in May and Grape Fest, which is the largest wine festival in the Southwest. Grapevine is also trademarked as the Christmas capital of Texas, as each year it hosts a Christmas parade of lights and many other events. So if you have an opportunity and you're in North Texas, Grapevine is a beautiful little city to come visit and a lot of shops to come shop at.